I'm live. Okay, welcome to today's broadcast and thanks for tuning in. Well, that's good. My husband's closing the living room door so he doesn't have to hear me. It's been a little while since I've broadcast, and there's some really sad topics today. So if I bring up what's trending on Twitter, at least the good news is that Stacey Abrams is once again running for the position of governor of Georgia, which is an extra incentive for people to really go all out in supporting the type of things that Stacey Abrams has fought for, namely voter registration that's equitable, and campaigning against Republican legislation to restrict access to voting, measures that are taken to specifically target African American voters in order to advantage the Republican Party at democracy's expense, as well as at the expense of the Democratic Party. Because African Americans know which side of the white supremacy bread the Republican Party's bread is buttered, meaning to say Republicans have cultivated the votes of white supremacists, and they've cultivated a narrative that fits in to a pre-existing biased narrative about how the world works, and that people will gravitate towards if what the politicians are arguing resonates with any irrational pre-existing narrative structures that live in their brain. They want intellectual integrity, and so will vote for a Republican, even if Republicans are voting to sabotage infrastructure bills, are voting against expansion of Medicaid, the addition of dental and hearing benefits to Medicaid, the introduction of free preschool through a mixture of federal and state funds, all manner of things which would significantly contribute to American society. Now, it's been in the Republicans' interest to erode our sense of community, to erode our sense of individual investment in a collective society, to care about what happens to us collectively. They want us to just care about what happens to us individually, and even then to still get it wrong about which party is better for the economy. The economy has been making great gains under Joe Biden. The unemployment rate's been falling significantly, and the achievements of the Biden-Harris administration have been significant. So, just noticing that not a whole heap of people are looking, but possibly people aren't expecting me on this platform at this particular time. So this isn't when I've been broadcasting usually, and I guess I have to just accept it that, yes, your audience to a degree evaporates when you haven't been consistent, you haven't been online for a while. So that's okay. I've been trying to find other ways to other directions for my energies, like being a mum, considering I just migrated to America a few months ago, and it's a lot to adjust to. So today, of course, I'm grappling with parental guilt because of the school shooting in Oxford Falls in Michigan. Now, the shooter is a young gentleman. The alleged shooter is a young gentleman by the name of Ethan Crumbley. His parents are possibly going to be charged for failing to secure access to weapons that they purchased. Their father bought a 9mm SIG something gun, and the 15-year-old boy posted pictures of that gun to Instagram saying, "Look at my new beauty, I'll answer any questions." He took that weapon to school a few hours after his parents met with teachers and the principal because of the teaching staff's concerns about Ethan's behavior in school. Now, I'm always grateful. This is going to sound terrible, but I'm grateful because I'm afraid of racist backlash. I'm grateful when a killer is white, because at least then there'll be less racist backlash. Because people who claim that racism against white people is a big thing don't understand that there aren't the historical and structural facilitators in place that act as a catalyst to add together to any prejudice. So maybe there's prejudice against white people, but there isn't racism because you don't have the two factors being added together. The historical and structurally and historically embedded tendencies to disdain Black people and to devalue their lives and to use the theoretical degradation of Black people as a scaffold for white advancement and act as if it's critical to people's self-esteem to be able to say, yes, Black people are unworthy, are second-class American citizens. And of course, you should be able to pull a Kyle Rittenhouse and take an AR-15 to a protest because you're just protecting businesses from people who aren't qualified as Americans fully deserving of constitutional protections. They don't get to not be shot because they might, they're suspected of crimes against property, and therefore it's okay to brandish weapons at them. In the same way that two white men thought they were justified to chase Ahmaud Arbery in two different pickup trucks armed with guns and then shoot him when he tried to defend himself against men who were pointing guns at him and threatening his life in that way. So, yes, the other very sad thing for today is that the Supreme Court, stacked up to the conservative hilt as it is with alleged rapist Brett Kavanaugh, alleged sexual harasser Clarence Thomas, religious extremist Amy Coney Barrett, and a third of the Supreme Court has been filled by previous former President Donald Trump, who is recognized as being hostile to democracy now, and that he incited an attempted overthrow of the government. He incited an insurrection on January the 6th, and a lot of evidence has come out. I'm sure plenty of people are prepared to ignore that evidence, but it's there. Evidence that man is hostile to American institutions and American standards, and that man is all out for self-advancement. So his 3 appointees to the Supreme Court sit shamelessly. They don't resign. They don't say, you know what, yes, it went too far. Donald Trump tried to overthrow the government, and Republicans such as Mitch McConnell pushed ahead with our nomination even before Ruth Bader Ginsburg was buried, in order to consolidate Republican power and minoritarian rule over the rest of America, which is anti-democratic and anti the wisdom of crowds. Now, in America, crowds haven't always had wisdom. There are plenty of racist white crowds who have burned townships and destroyed property. So crowds aren't always something to point to, but in a democracy, it's supposed to be an important countermeasure to the power of the self-sustaining, self-aggrandizing power of wealthy people. Oh, yay, Molly's there. Well, that makes everything wonderful. Hello, Molly. I was feeling a little bit like I was chatting to myself because there's one person watching, and perhaps that one person is you. But if it's you, that makes it all worthwhile. I've been going through some disheartening news of the day, but also pointing out that Stacey Abrams is running for governor. And look, bad news is the lemons of lemonade. Life gives you lemons, or you encounter the lemonade. Or you encounter the lemons. Those are the consequences that you should then rush to get the sugar for so you can make lemonade, i.e., use your human emotions to do what those human emotions are trying to prompt you to do. They make you feel unpleasant, and they'll stay that way until you take action as a countermeasure, until you take action to rid yourself of those feelings. Those feelings are like an itch telling you some part of your body requires scratching. So yes, it is not karma. It is not fate. It is not, oh, there's always a silver lining. It is not, oh, well, things always happen for a reason. As a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, I've never been able to derive cheer from that old homily of everything happens for a reason. Nope. Sometimes they're bad reasons. They're not always good reasons. Concentration camps and the whole Nazi regime existed because humans behaved badly and other humans were passive in the face of obvious signs of escalating badness, which calls for vigilance. And yes, the Supreme Court are likely to allow Mississippi's anti-abortion law to stand. They heard arguments today. They asked questions of the different attorney generals making the case for and against. And Kavanaugh asked about precedent and said, yep, precedents have been overturned a lot, which makes a lie out of him, because during his confirmation hearings, he said that the Roe v. Wade case was settled, was established precedent, and you don't overturn precedent. But he implied that he's going to vote to overturn precedent and that abortion will be effectively disallowed for women in America after 15 weeks. Seems likely. So it's not settled. They haven't pronounced their vote, but Amy Coney Barrett was saying that you can't even say that harm might come to a pregnant woman because she can always give the baby up, so it won't necessarily disrupt her life. You can just be pregnant, carry the child, put it up for adoption. And that, of course, gravely ignores the risks to the life and health and well-being of people who do go through pregnancy, particularly girls who might have been victimized by rape or incest, or potentially be victims of manipulation or bad judgment. Those children are much more at risk of significant harmful consequences of going through pregnancy and birth. So it's not widely known. A big deal has been made of what happens to older women and how risky it is for older women to go through pregnancy and childbirth. But it's actually very risky for young girls to go through that as well. They're at significantly higher risk of death and injury. And the United Nations recognizes forced birth as a form of torture as well. That it is psychological torture to legally withhold bodily autonomy away from a woman, when we are the gatekeepers of whether or not we go through pregnancy. Science allows us that, in that typically women can avail themselves of different methodologies to stop a pregnancy in its track before a child is very obviously a child and a person who could obviously attract the same type of legal protections as a human child who has been through the process of pregnancy and childbirth and has emerged at the other end as a live, intact human being. So yes, women want the right to be able to be gatekeepers of pregnancy and childbirth, and to say, no, we don't want to go through with that process. We're not always successful in telling people, no, we don't want to have sexual relations. Sometimes women are overpowered and are raped. Sometimes girls are victimized by family members. Sometimes women, children and girls are victims of incest. And it's just going to be hard watching so many people subjected to laws created and upheld by a Supreme Court that says states can just push through whatever laws they like. Why not let it be state-based rather than there be any codified protection of women? Why uphold any implication in the Constitution that women should be allowed to have autonomy over their bodies? Peter Parker's on Twitch and says it's good to see you online again. Thank you, Peter Parker. I do remember encountering you previously on Twitch. Molly told me that a lot of people have moved across to Twitch, and I presume that's because of problems with the HAPS platform. Okay. Let's see what else we have. We have some other things. Let's go through my bookmarks. Oh, yes, the news broke today that Trump knew he had COVID on September the 26th, 2020. So he knew he was positive for COVID. He knew he had COVID prior to the debate with Biden 3 days later. He probably wasn't feeling that well. This was revealed because Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, wrote about it in a book. So he said he told it to Trump, who said, blip, you have to be blipping kidding me, in a sanitized way as Mark Meadows presented it, but that Trump then took a second rapid test that was negative. And rapid tests are not always held up to be accurate. I don't even know if that particular part of the story is true, but I'm presuming that the one positive test part of the story is definitely true because it's very damaging to Trump, and Mark Meadows admitted it, and he doesn't typically admit things that are damaging for the leader of his political party. So Trump went to the two-person debate between himself and Joe Biden and yelled and ranted about Hunter Biden and tried to upset Joe Biden in a way that seemed calculated to prompt or to trigger stuttering and discomfort from Joe Biden that would make him look weak, as opposed to Trump's strength through willingness to shout. But Trump was exhaling as much COVID particles as he possibly could in an effort to use his own illness as a biological weapon against Joe Biden. Now, we don't have any witnesses testifying to that effect. We just have Mark Meadows letting slip the smaller, less damaging admission that Trump had a positive test for COVID 3 days prior to that debate. It also illustrates at a microcosm level what Trump did to America at a macrocosm level. So Trump lied about COVID and minimized COVID in general, as well as lying about and minimizing COVID in his own case when he had COVID. He didn't wear a mask. He did debate prep with Chris Christie, who wasn't wearing a mask, and Rudy Giuliani. So he presumably didn't tell his personal intimate cohort that he was likely COVID positive. And he did all this because out of devotion to advancing a particular narrative, to establishing himself as the anti-COVID candidate, in my world, come with me on a journey, believe in me, and I will allow you to exist in a world where COVID isn't a big deal. And you can disdain the people who tell you to do something about COVID. They're like a neurotic mother who's just nagging you for the fun of it. I am the benevolent father who says to you, it's not a real problem. So believe me, and that will be true. So Peter Parker says he thinks I can do well on Twitch. Hope to see you here more often. Well, it does sound like maybe it's got more political commentary nowadays. Peter, so I am broadcasting to a multi-streaming platform called StreamYard, so simultaneously broadcasting to Twitch and Twitter and YouTube. But yes, maybe I'll go onto the Twitch website so I can fiddle with that more. And then Peter, feel free to ever chip in or chime in with any Twitch tips that you might have. Now, Oh, yes. So knowing that Trump was infected, not only did he go to a debate, circumvent the precondition of the debate, which was the candidates were supposed to be tested. So Joe Biden was tested before participating in that debate. Trump's team turned up late and so were able to skip the process. Now, that's also a dereliction of duty on the part of whichever television network was hosting that debate. Chris Wallace, I think, hosted it. So was it on Fox? Can't have been on Fox. Was it on MSNBC? Let's see who hosted. Who hosted final presidential debate? Kristen Welker. Was it the first? No, it was the first debate. So we shouldn't do that. We should go, who hosted the first debate? Chris Wallace. Okay. I'm just checking. Okay, yeah. So Chris Wallace, Tuesday the 29th. The second debate was cancelled. Trump had COVID. More seriously at that point, but yes. So Tuesday, September the 29th, hosted at Cleveland, Ohio, Case Western Reserve University. So I don't know. Well, presumably there's still a television network paying for that. And other people have speculated very strongly as well that they think Mike Pence also attempted to give COVID to Kamala Harris, but nobody has yet leaked to say that Pence had tested positive for COVID prior to participating in the vice presidential debate. Oh, how are you doing, Molly? It is nice to see if you're still there. So I've talked for a few minutes now, and I have discussed the irresponsibility at a microcosm and macrocosm level of Trump, minimizing his COVID diagnosis, but also minimizing the whole COVID pandemic for the entire United States, which has had very long shadows as a behavioral legacy because millions of Americans aren't vaccinated now as a consequence of firmly established contrarian impulses with regards to all COVID mitigation measures. So they won't wear masks, they won't take the vaccine, they won't do anything because their emperor god king person, Trump, told them to dismiss COVID and told them it would be an act of political disloyalty to him to take COVID seriously because COVID hype was a product of Democratic Party misbehavior, that they were falsely characterizing COVID as a serious situation. And once COVID became too significant to deny the severity of, Trump tried to then frame it as a war attack. He tried to harness the power of latent xenophobia amongst a subset of the American population by saying that COVID was an attack by China. Instead of being an unfortunate occurrence that needed a concerted and consistent effort by leadership to be clear and consistent with public health messaging, because it's much easier to get people on board with behavioral changes when you repeat yourself and when you're clear about everybody needing to get on board. Trump did the opposite of that. He told people masks were probably useless, that he saw waiters touch their faces. He told people that COVID was the latest Democratic hoax. He gave legs to people's contrarian impulses, and those impulses have metastasized into something that is killing thousands of Americans each month. a disproportionate amount of hospitalizations for COVID are, of course, unvaccinated people. And this pandemic could have been brought to a conclusion, or at least at a global level, because Trump has a global influence. He was the most talked about American president for a while. And Barack Obama was a historic president and was talked about a lot internationally as well. But Donald Trump was definitely a topic of conversation around the world. All the people debating, is he a fascist? What's wrong with America? Alternatively, people saying, we think he's great and a symbol of capitalism, and how capitalist people who support capitalism need to stand up against those wicked communists. So I'd like to just interject myself into my own rant and say I'm not a communist, and I am smiling, but I acknowledge that communism is a potently destructive form of political ideology that has frequently led to consolidation of power in an unhealthy way, in an undemocratic way, that has led to the death of tens of millions of people each time it's been put in play in a country with a large population. So China, 30 to 50 million people died of starvation or disease facilitated by lack of nourishment as a consequence of consolidated power in Chairman Mao's hands under a communist system, leading him to think he was infallible, leading him to propose all types of great leaps forward and big, powerful changes to industry and agriculture that resulted in a lot of crops failing, a lot of agricultural workers being diverted to steel manufacture, and a lot of agricultural processes being diverted to new experimental tactics that resulted in crops failing left, right, and center, and Chairman Mao being told still that he was a genius, and bits of wood carved into shapes resembling crops, fruits and vegetables, and painted and then photographed and presented to Mao as evidence of his genius and munificent accomplishments. I better go hang out with my children. But I have to give them a hug because I'm sorry. I'm sorry to my children for bringing you to a place where the gun laws are too lax, and where children have to do lockdown drills in schools, and where there are risks that disgruntled children whose parents have weapons might get access to one of those weapons and bring them to school and shoot their classmates and shoot their teachers. A lot of destruction is made possible by guns. So guns don't kill people, but people wielding guns that they have access to because of overly lax gun laws, those people are able to kill a lot of people. You can disarm someone wielding a knife more readily than you can disarm a 15-year-old wielding a knife much more readily and with much less harm than you can disarm a teenager wielding either a semi-automatic weapon or a standard 9mm Glock. And I'm so, in a way, ashamed of my selfishness in moving here and embracing the idea of moving here, because my husband has an American job, and of course I followed him. And I was looking forward to any good I might be able to accomplish here. Because sometimes some Americans listen to me. I have a small audience in America. But my children like it here, but it's hard to think about how I am putting them at risk. at a population level, the risk is relatively small when spread out over the entire population of school-going Americans. But it is a risk, and it's not a risk that's present in either Singapore or Australia. Children don't take guns to school because guns are not that readily available. We don't have the NRA. We don't have such a potent gun fetishist lobby making use of a very potent conservative right-wing media bubble that distorts what people hear about and that fills people with catchphrases and slogans about how great guns are and how great individual liberties are, and de-emphasizes our collective ties to each other, de-emphasizes the responsibilities that should go along with owning a gun. It should be very difficult. You should have to get a license. You should have to swear multiple times that you will store your ammunition and your guns separately, that you will keep all guns away from children, your own and other people's children, that you won't just casually leave guns around your house, that guns are to be taken seriously, that guns are lethal weapons. So Molly says, have you thought of homeschooling? No, I wouldn't want to deprive them of school either. I mean, we live in Massachusetts, which has some of the tightest gun laws in the United States, but it's still not as safe as Australia in that regard. And when they have lockdown drills, they don't tell them about active shooters. They just tell them fire drills. We go outside. For lockdown drills, we stay inside and we lock everything up. So I don't think they're appraised of the likelihood of active shooters in their school. So I'll have to ask them, though. I'll try and have to ask them without introducing the idea to them, to just sort of subtly probe. So what did you do the lockdown drill in school, and what did you think about it? You ready to go, darling? Anyway, so I'll talk to you later, Molly. You were teaching in a middle school when an open shooter drill occurred, which was scary. Yes, it would have been scary. I've heard it's been psychologically harmful to kids to be told about why there are active shooter drills. So yes, the email I got from the school reassured me that they were just treating it as a different type of drill to a fire drill, but I'll report back with what I find out from my children with delicate, subtle questioning as much as I can. So yes, take care, everyone, and I'll broadcast. Okay, bye.